in your mind, what's the current landscape of developers in Web2? And maybe you want to compare that to the current state of developers in Web3.
So I guess to set the stage, people have for the past couple of years been talking about how to get 1 billion users on chain. And at least the way we see things, to get 8 billion users on chain, you have to get a million developers on chain. I mean, developers are the ones who are building these 10x better apps, and then users are the ones who are opting to use them. And we think that we have a long ways to go to actually get 1 million developers on chain, but there is a path there. So, I mean, just to contrast it, there's probably, in the most recent Electric Capital kind of developer report, there were like 20,000 developers on chain, and there's like 20 million developers in the world. So how do we bridge that gap? At least at Fluent, we think that we need to create 10x better developer experiences to actually make a meaningful dent, and that's what we're working on.
So we've got, I mean, there's a huge gap. We've got 20,000 on-chain developers, about that, right? Somewhere in that range. Tough to know the exact number. And then we've got about 20 million total developers in the world. Most of those, obviously, 99% working on Web2. So what's the roadblock, or what do we need to do? What's required in order for us to get more developers into Web3 and developing on chain?
So the way, just to ground it, I mean, everyone at this point is aware of Ethereum, right? And they're aware of, all the benefits of building of something, on Ethereum. Well, not all the benefits, but the kind of some of the core attributes of building on Ethereum. It's clearly known to be like a desirable destination. It's a well-known brand at this point. It's, as they'd call it, like an infinite garden. So like, how do you get into this garden? Like, how do you get developers building on it? I think there's been kind of two general roadblocks. One has been throughput, and then the other has been accessibility. And I think that the throughput is clear. We've been focusing on it with scaling solutions and L2s. I know you guys talk about that on this pod, and that mostly affects kind of like performance and cost, and we're solving those problems. I think that there are a ton of really amazing roll-up teams, and they're doing really great work there. And now we're at a point where we do have kind of an abundance of block space. But the thing is, a lot of that block space, especially since most of the roll-ups so far have been EVM roll-ups, which is basically, for those not aware, taking kind of like the same execution environment and the same way to program and the same languages from the Ethereum L1, and kind of just like copying that onto roll-ups or L2, which is great for existing developers and existing applications on Ethereum and kind of moving them up in a more performant way. But it's not necessarily solving kind of broader problems for less crypto native developers. So the millions of developers that we're talking about. So then what's the other piece? Accessibility. Obviously, there's accessibility problems for kind of end users too, which obviously we're not going to talk too much about at the moment, but there's a lot of work being done there. And that's clearly a very important piece. But just to segment kind of the developer part of it, I don't think current rollups have really done as good of a job solving the developer accessibility portion. So what does that actually mean? Well, right now, developers to build on Ethereum or Ethereum rollups, they have to learn blockchain specific languages. Like, for example, Solidity is a blockchain specific thing. Like, that doesn't exist. It's new because blockchain is relatively new. That hasn't existed. It doesn't exist outside of the blockchain space. So that's like just an extra thing somebody has to learn. It's very specific, and it's not necessarily, tailored for all the different types of use cases. And contrast that with kind of the general purpose languages that exist in the world. Not only are people familiar with them already from Web2, they've been around for years and years and years and years, but there's also like 10 to 20 common ones, and developers understand very clearly that they pick up different tools. They're just tools, and you pick up different tools to solve different tasks, and developers get that. So it's very constrained currently in the blockchain world, even with rollups in terms of like developer experience. And then even the languages part is probably only, probably less than 50% of the real challenge. I mean, the bigger developer learning curve is actually learning how to program for smart contracts and blockchains. I mean, this is kind of like a very esoteric thing. Mm-hmm. And over time, I think we can abstract more and more things away for certain use cases, but we have ways to go.